Okay, today is the day of a unified theory, the unified periodic flavor theory. Up, okay, because this is a thing, and I don't, I'm not that impressed with our new knowledge. Certainly not the way we're handling it, but our old knowledge is very clear about these kinds of things. So, what I've been doing for the last decade or so is looking at these to see if there were a common pattern. And what we get to is the essence of time. And we have to understand that there are flavors to time. And we have recorded them for thousands of years. And they do match. So the simple formula is I equals E equals B. In other words, the same patterns that we find in the invisible exploration is the same patterns that we find in the elemental and the biological. So what does this mean? Well, there's different cycles of time with different numbers of components, and they all have very specific descriptors that contain keywords, information, processes, personalities, functions, and products, depending on which way you go with it. So, in other words, this information is very advanced when it comes to the invisible. We never had a causation, and we didn't have a physical. We don't have a physical causation, okay? But what we have is all the evidence of it being there, just like the wind. You can't see the wind, but you know it's there, and that's the same thing with the flavors of time. So we have this all across the world. It's in every continent, and this was the penultimate knowledge of the earth. And there's a lot of theories about our history, but I have to agree in general that the history that we're presented is wrong. It's too advanced. And you'll see through this process that these same patterns form no matter what substance they're working with. So in the elemental, we're looking at the periodic table. So the periodic table, I had learned all the calendars first, and then been studying those for a long time. I said, well, it's what we're looking at is periodicity, the patterns of periodicity and the flavors contained in these segments. And all these agree across the world. So in other words, we have common lengths of time broken up into common portions or segments, call them pies, and they all agree on the descriptor. Although there are cultural differences between how they express it, the overall sentiment and the function and the products are the same. So with the periodic table, we have a very nicely presented set of information, and we're still learning the products of these, but there's enough to see. But when I first got to the periodic table, I took one look at it and I said, why does it drop down there? Why does it drop down there like that? Why is that all split up like that? And they keep changing it, so it's not done. But it looks like a half-finished building with a stack of material left outside. That's what it looks like to me. It is not presented in anything at all that looks beautiful, right? This is not a pretty picture. It's confusing, it's disjointed. It looks like it has problems. So that's just the way I see it. Um, and I see they've even moved. Now, this is the top view off of Wikipedia, the first view they show you of the periodic table. Now, lanthanum used to be down there next to cerium, but it's not there anymore. They moved it back up. They keep playing around with this thing. There's 84 primordial elements, but there's a war on Pluto. So in the element of plutonium, they have downgraded it officially, at least on Wikipedia. There's a contentious thing about it, but I'm just saying they downgraded plutonium to a non-primordial status, which is, okay. It just seems like everybody's attacking anything that's Pluto, doesn't it? The planet was demoted from a planet. The element plutonium has been demoted as a primordial, and even Disneyland is under attack. Pluto's on the run. I don't. It's just arguments, different arguments. I don't care. They can do whatever they want, because when you keep plutonium as a primordial element, it works and it fits, and I'm leaving it there. I'll trust the pattern before I trust opinion. So as far as I'm concerned, there's 84 primordial elements. Okay? The next set is biological. The biological are the amino acids. We can just look at this. These are the basic proteinogenic amino acids that form life. And these are just an amazing thing to look at. It very confusing, very, very difficult. I'm still not done. They're not done. Science is not done with these amino acids. They're not done with the periodic table either. These are things that are relatively new, and they're not completely figured out. And so they're still working on it, but it didn't take long to get confirmation that there are in fact 20 of these, and they're called the 20 standard amino acids. And they do have products and they do have functions. So, and they do have various orders. So there's all these different orders of them depending on how you look at these. So I had to look at them and say, okay, what are the functions? What are the different, what is the order? What is the function? Well, there didn't seem to be any discernible order. They don't really seem too concerned with that. They list them in different orders and they just throw them out there. And look at this. So in this slide, I guess they're trying to show that they get more complex as they go on. Glycine is the only non-chiral. So I started with that because that fits with a certain day. That fits in all the systems. The first one you're going to find is the one that is at that dividing line, lanthanum and glycine and T-hox. These are the keepers of the line. It's the union of polarities. So that was an easy start, and then from there he had to go through and really learn a lot of the language. The language is off the chart. The symbols are off the chart. These are well, let's just say I hope that we'll advance these so that they're easier to learn. And I think when you match them with the days, it makes an awful lot of sense. The thing that is left out here is any notion or recognition of ancient knowledge that has existed for a long, long time. So 20 in the Bible is described as a score. Not that I use a Bible for any kind of factual referencing, but some things that are handed down through time are used in different ways. In the time, you can keep it in a calendar. There's symbols you can draw that you can just depict these in glyph form. You can use descriptors. The I Ching uses the hexagrams and the lines broken in solid lines. It goes on and on. But you have, for the 20 days, just the examples that we do have that are very complete come from mostly the Chinese. The I Ching is by far the best one. So, and then you have the Maya, Aztec, and the Cherokee. These are all united in what day it is. So these all agree on what day it is. They have their cultural differences that are not very big at all, but they all have the 20 days. And the Japanese have the 10 additional views of Mount Fuji by Hokusei, and those are done in the pairs. So for each one, it represents 2. So the first one is Batzin E, the next one is Ajin Ish, and so on and so forth all the way around. They fit very, very nicely. They're very well done. That guy was a master. So that's a single guy that learned it and put it into paintings. He did a beautiful, beautiful job. So as far as the pictorial aspect of the 36 views of Mount Fuji are the 36 decans, the pairs are the 10 additional views. Those are the best visual representation of these segments of time that we have on the planet. Along with the Hindu. The Hindu have the 36 decans. Now those are the ones, I use those pretty much every day. But I cross-check with the descriptors and the other images if there's any kind of question at all. The 20 standard amino acids are by alphabetical order. So the alphabetical order turns out to be the right order. And the reason for this is self-forming. And I'll get into that. The 20 primordial elements, tin through ytterbium. So the 20 days in the periodic table start with tin, and they go all the way around to ytterbium, making exactly 20 days. The functions and the products and the sequence of these match precisely. And not just the sequence and the function. Okay, so in other words, if you've got 1 in this set, is this 1 in that set. 2 is 2 and 3 is 3, so that's the sequence. But you also have, okay, let's look at number 7. Does it have the same function and product? Oh, yes, it does. Look at that. It's perfect. So not only that, but beyond that, to get to the real meat of it and to really put the exclamation point on it, you can take known processes that occur when you combine these things, or the interrelational aspects of these amino acids. In other words, you could say, well, what's the relationship between tyrosine and phenylalanine? Is that mentioned? It is. It's exactly mentioned. So these things keep going on and on. You have, like with histidine and alanine, you have the wine. And isn't that interesting? So yeah, the interrelational aspects match as well in those orders. Okay? So the scientist and the physical mind can try to argue there's no possible way for the alphabetical order to have landed in the precise order of time, but I would just say, well, we can show you. But so there it is. Genesis and Exodus, they used the 20 days in the Bible. That's why they call it a score in there, because that was a known thing. These books are collected, these stories are collected and compiled from around the world, different stories from different cultures, and then they are put in a structure so that it follows these ancient timekeeping systems. And I just find it very weird that the cultures that first were taken over by Christianity are the only cultures that do not have the 20 days and the 36 decans. And if they do, they're not very out with them. Where's the I Ching for Europe? Where's the Mayan calendar for Europe? It's not there. Where did it go? Well, it's in the Bible. So what are they doing? Well, they're hiding it. They're keeping it for themselves. They erase it everywhere they go. So not only are they keeping it for themselves, they're erasing it everywhere they go. A footnote on the 20 days. The major arcana of the Rider-Waite Tarot by Pamela Colman Smith are 20. Okay? If you don't count the Fool in the World, there's 20 major arcana. Those are, I mean, forget the meanings that anybody ascribes to them. The image stands on their own, just 1 through 20, and they are in the proper order. They're not the greatest, but it was an attempt. So this was the attempt of Europe to revive this information. And just based on how, I don't want to call it sloppy, but I would call it a recognizably initiate level production. Okay? So they burdened her with these symbols of the swords and the cups and all this, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but it really, that hampers an artist's ability to really dive into it, because you're automatically, burdened with having to incorporate all these things. I mean, you get up to 10 swords, where are you going to put them all? It's like, so it's just I don't want to call it amateur, but I would call it initiate level production. So the rest of these are not. Okay, the rest of these are very high level of knowledge that is needed to attain these. I would argue a much higher threshold of knowledge and wisdom than the periodic table or the amino acids, because those kind of show themselves, don't they? With these, you have to go pull this out of the invisible and write it all down and be accurate. So that, to me, is much more difficult. So the alphabetical order of the amino acids in the argument for, like, because somebody would say, well, how could that even be possible? The only reason we put them in that alphabetical order was just because, somebody wanted them in alphabetical order. Like, that's just one of these things we do. We'll put things, if we don't know what order to put them in, we'll put them in alphabetical order. Okay, well, that's fine. Where'd the alphabet come from? So there's a great video on the history of the alphabet. I think it's a guy called Useful Charts on YouTube. I will put a link in the descriptor to his video describing the evolution of the alphabet, the English alphabet, because that's the one we're talking about. And the letters are pictograms. So, and they follow the 20 days. The consonants follow the 20 days. Okay? And so the only ones I had to switch to make it really good. Like, I don't find any holes. Like, I can't move any of them around and say, oh yeah, this could go over here and then that could go over there. No, you'll mess them up. But if you've got two that are out of place, and by switching them, they actually fit where they're going better than where they were, well, that's an easy fix, right? That's like finding an unplugged wire. You just have to plug it back in and you're fine. And that's what that was. So I switched the T and the P, you can notice. And the T, because the T definitely belongs on Eek. That is the Mayan glyph for Eek. So these follow very, very nicely. I mean, I could just give a couple examples. Like on Z, well, Putin is born on the day of Z. A lot of these military types are. Hitler was born on Z. Mad Dog Mattis, this general we have in the United States, he was born on Z. And they call him Mad Dog Mattis, and he's born on the day of Z. That's the day of the dog, or the tail of the dog sticking in the air. These are the alpha males that can get violent. They're really like guard dogs. They really are. You don't want these people in charge unless you need protection and defense. They shouldn't be in politics. So it's a different thing. So, but there was Z, and said everybody's looking at these tanks as they rolled into Kiev, and they're like, oh, what's with the Z? What's with the Z? Well, I'm not saying that Putin knows his day is Z and that's his mark or anything like that. But I will say that I'll bet you he had something to do with the choice of what do we want to write on these tanks as we go through there. And if he didn't, it just worked out that way. Whatever it is, he's born on the day of Z. That's the way you pronounce that day is Z. It's like a T sound with it. I can't do it, but the Quiche Maya make that sound. So, and then the question mark. So the question mark is a Noj, it's a J. The upside down J is the question mark. Well, the glyph for Noj actually looks like a question mark. They make a question mark out of your brain because your brain kind of makes a question mark as it goes down into your neck, doesn't it? The spinal column and the head make like a question mark, and that's the glyph for Noj. And it's known to be common with Ajmak and Noj. And Noj is definitely the day of information. So yeah, the question mark, the J fits there really nicely. The F fits on Ish very, very nicely because Ish is actually the day of the female jaguar is like would be the animal for that, would be the female jaguar. And but it's known as the day of woman, but not in the way a lot of people might think, This is the day that women can get, they can get a little fed up with dudes. If you're trying to dominate them or, coerce them into situations that, are bad for them, this is the day. You want to be careful with the women on that day. They will kill you. It actually uses that word. I will kill you. I'm going to kill you. How often do we hear that? If men or women, how often do women say that? They're the ones that are allowed to say that. See, women can say that, but that's what it is. And so the alphabet works. So the fact that the alphabetical order of the amino acids is the one that matches the 20 days, that is not surprising to me at all. In fact, it makes complete sense because, as you'll see, I'll do 20,000 examples before I'm done making these videos, and none of the people who are doing these things that perfectly match their time have any idea what day it is. So we know that it happens. And can it happen with a group? Absolutely. It happens in film all the time. And films take a lot of people to make. And they release them on a certain day. They're not sitting around with an astrologer. I mean, maybe some of them are. But this takes tons and tons of people to put together a production. But the essence of the director or the writer is the one that shines through. And then time takes over from there. So if the movie hits on a good time, it can be a big hit. And people look at it and say, that wasn't that great of a movie, but look how good it did. Well, they really nailed it with the timing of the release. So that happens a lot. I've noticed that. Could go on and on about it. But the self-forming in science is not surprising because I do scientists all the time. Everything in science, all the famous people in science, every single one of them, when they nail something, it's on time and it's according to their day. And there are, so far, I have found no exceptions. And we'll keep looking, but just haven't found any. So this is the way it looks when the different cycles of time are arranged in a calendrical format and paired with the order of the primordial periodic elements. Okay? So it starts at the bottom there with the red day of hydrogen, and I keep the perfect order of the elements all the way around, and they go all the way around. There's 32 in the first circle. Outside circle, there's 32 with 4 outside. The next layer inside, and you can see that germanium, or is it gallium? I can't see. I'm sorry. I can't put this thing on the screen, so it's really hard to see it. But I'll put a link in the descriptor to Time School where there is an enlargeable image of this if anybody wanted to study it more closely. You'll see that all these elements are in order, and the change occurs right there in the center in the bottom, and that also is known throughout long time that a labyrinth is one of the universal shapes of the unfolding of the universe. And a lot of people just go and walk through a labyrinth just to feel spiritual, like a crop circle. And there's a reason for that these shapes do this to people, isn't there? So, but that comes out of there, out of the decans. Those are the 32 decans with the 4 outside. That makes 36, and I'm not going to explain why those 4 are outside today, but there's a good reason for that. It cuts up and goes over to the 12. And this was a little tough for me to find, but it just kind of worked out. I said, well, let's just list them and see how it works out, and we'll see how it plays out. And they actually just fell right into place. So this wasn't something where I took a lot of effort to arrange them. I did the times, and then I just let the periodic table unfold. And it happened in order. So it goes up, hits the 12, comes around from the 12, out of the back end of the 12, which is Pisces, comes down and goes into Bots of the 20 days, goes around counterclockwise the 20 days, and then cuts up and goes clockwise with the 8 masters, and then counterclockwise again with what I'm calling the 4 elements and the 4 directions. So the final 2 circles are both 4, and that is also known in the in basic understanding of where we are and what's going on. You've got to know the 4 elements and the 4 directions. That's kindergarten. So it ends up that way. And none of them are out of place. So it turns out, and in these pies, right, if you take a slice of pie out of this, you're going to see when you read the descriptors that these things they're nice and neat in their little place. You can't move them around. So that's how I knew it fit, was because you can't move any. And so, but that's the way it works. They just unfolded and landed right in their places. And getting into the individual and the interactions of them is also very telling, because there's antipodal correlations as well all the way through this thing. So the key to correlating the 36 decans with the periodic table, because the periodic table is presented in this block form, kind of made it a little harder than it should have been, but okay. And I had to go through and learn and read about each one of these elements. And what I would do is it would take the element and just say, okay, today we're just going to do this, and just go through it and look for things and say, hey, what do we make with this? What's its function? What does it do? And that's how they ended up being, wow, these are right in line. These are in line. These functions are unmistakable. So in this picture, this is the bonding image, like how they bond. And as you can see, arsenic, selenium, bromine, and krypton are the last 4. Krypton is the element number 36, okay? And it struck me as I looked at it, this used to be the first display of the periodic table on Wiki. They've changed it, well, like I said, but this used to be, these 4 used to be the only place in the periodic table where each one was a different color in a row, right? Each one was a different color representing a different type of bonding. And I said, wow, that's really interesting that there's no other place where there's 4 elements in a row, and it just happens to be at the end of the 36. Now, this is very key because there's 2 different ways to list the decans. The most common way is to take these 4 particular decans out and list them at the end, even though numerically they are not supposed to be there. And they are depicted and shown as separate, either inside or outside the calendar circle, but integral nonetheless. And even the Hindu who list them in their proper order note on them that these are what they call warning decans or danger decans. And so they're always listed at the end. So when I saw them here, and it just fits. So that's how it got started. The index on the right is on my website. I'll leave a link to that as well, because these are the verified, the ones that I have verified so far. They're real easy. These are in your face. It's the I Ching, the Hindu, the Mount Fuji drawings, Rider-Waite Tarot, and the Genesis, the chapters of Genesis. Follow the decans 1 through 36, and then chapter 37 starts all over with the decans. I'm not going to get into the Tricinas or days. I got a different video up there about the Bible if you want to look at it. That's where they got that stuff. But and most recently, I do want to note this, because I've been saying it for years. They finally came out with it, that they kept digging and looking at all these stones under Stonehenge, and they did find out, and the scientists did come forward and say, yeah, they used to follow these 10-day periods. There's markings indicating these 10-day periods. It's like, oh, okay, finally joined the family, right? Because what happened to that? Like, how did all of Europe lose the 36 decans in the 20 days? Well, isn't that interesting? So there's crime. It's a crime, in my opinion. So here's the invisible. The invisible are all these calendars. Now, I know famously everybody wants to talk about, oh, the 64 codons in the I Ching and all this. Okay, don't get ahead of yourself. If you don't know that the I Ching is the 20 days and the 36 decans and the 8 masters, well, then, let's cool it. I understand there's 64 of them, and they found that mathematically nice. And so we've got, one of the first computers was Commodore 64, and they go in increments of 64 and all this. I don't know about any of that. I'm not looking at the codons. That's not my gig. I'm not even going to go there. Somebody else can do it. So I don't do personal readings either. I'm not doing any of that. I'm working on this stuff, just the correlations. That's what I like to work on. That's where I'm staying. That's my lane. So I highly doubt. Well, I'll say this. I don't doubt that there's something to do with the codons in there, but I don't know it, and I'm not going to look at it. So somebody else will have to do that. It's too much vocabulary for me to learn, and the amino acids, frankly, are just this. It's all like a whole new language to look at the amino acids. There's so many different words that are unique to that study that it slows it way down for me, because I really don't want to make a mistake. I realize how precarious and this is. Okay. So then there's the Dendera zodiac. There's the Mayan calendar with the 2 little wheels. There's the Hindu calendar there with the nice little blue and the pink and yellows. I mean, look how, just how time is presented in an intelligent, coherent, recognizable way. Like, if you know these time segments in your own culture, you're going to be able to recognize them if you see them in a different culture, because they don't use language. They use pictographs, right? So you can easily see it. And the issue with everybody saying that, oh, that's a star map. That is not a star map, okay? That's not a star map. The I Ching's not a star map, and neither is the Dendera, and neither is the Aztec Sunstone. They don't have any stars on there at all. Now, are there certain constellations that people can say, oh, yeah, here? Yeah, but not on the Dendera, because every single set I've seen where people are assigning constellations to the Dendera are dead wrong, easily provable. So I'm just telling you that academia and science are way behind on this. And, I'm not going to try to provide an explanation for that. I think people can work it out for themselves. They just don't want to touch anything they can't prove. But also, clearly, religion eradicated this knowledge from Europe. Okay? And they couldn't eradicate. They tried to eradicate it from Egypt, but then they tried to hide it. So the Temple of Dendera is actually paid for by a group of emperors, I believe. And they went to store that information, and that's why there's some hieroglyphs other people can't read. There's all kinds of things going on in the Dendera that I see people get wrong every single day because they just don't know these things. It's a simple thing. Everybody else in the world knows it. Okay? Because it's everywhere. So just because you don't know it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that it's not high science. It's very high science. The 20 days alone is a very scientific, it's an amazing, amazing thing that humans have this ability. You can use it for a ton of things. It is an integral part of any sentient communal group of humans to have. That's why it was spread all over the earth. It made it. The 8 masters, okay, so we go from lutetium and it goes around to platinum. And these are the 8 masters. This is the correlation and how they fall. And just to give a quick, example is you see right there, the I Ching, the translation is Tui, T-U-I, but it's from Chinese. So that's the English, right? That's the English thing for it. But hafnium is just it. That's where it lands. Okay, so where is that position in those 8? It's in the twins. It's in Gemini. It goes all the way through from hafnium all the way out is all the twins. Okay, and this is the most confounding area for people when you're learning this stuff is being able to determine which one of the twins you're dealing with, because sometimes when you're dealing with that portion of time over there, it can be tricky. But it's not when you have all of them. When you have all of them, and then of course the periodic table, this is actually something that the periodic table helps solve this long-standing, I don't want to call it a dispute, but when I put them all together and I'm looking at all these different cultures, I could see that some of them are just one-off. And one of the places, and it's very brash, and anybody could argue it was very horrifyingly arrogant of me to say, oh no, the Hindu got it wrong. You got to move. You have to switch these two, right, in the twins. And they may have done it on purpose, because a lot of times when different cultures present this stuff, it's a great test to just switch one of them or leave one out or something like this. And if the people that you're mixing with do not know it and they can't spot it, then you will know you're dealing with someone who is not at the appropriate level. So they put these little, it's like the trick question on your test. That's what it is. Also, because they didn't want to share the information, they deemed this as being a dangerous amount. Some of this information, like the days of the Maya, their descriptors, they did not want to release that for a long time, and then they decided, okay, it's now time for us to release this information. So that's how I got it. Was they were actually working to invite certain people to come down there and I brought them a dendera, and we exchanged, and so I gave them the dendera, and they gave me the 20 days, and it's just been life consuming ever since. But they decided to do that, I think, because they realized one of the dangers of putting this information out there is that bad guys will use it, and they'll take advantage of the poor and the people who aren't into that world power game, and that's exactly what was happening. So I think that's why they said, okay, now we can release it, because it's already at that point. Okay, and I think I can prove this. But here we are, looking at the times of these. How long have we had these? See, so my position is the periodic table is not really figured out. That is definitely not the best form to present it in. I would put mine forth as an example of how it should be presented. I don't think that's the final example, but it's definitely way better than what they got. It looks unfinished. It looks dry. It lacks artistic. It lacks the artistic essence of what it is. Like, these are all the things that make up everything that is matter. I mean, it should be gorgeous to look at, because everything else is. Our solar system is gorgeous, right? Look at it. Outside in nature is gorgeous. Everything is gorgeous. Our calendars, the calendars of each culture, gorgeous. Everything is displayed. When you've got something real good, it's time to bring in the artists, okay? And they haven't done that with the periodic table. This is there's a little, it feels like it's hoarding or something, or there's just, they don't want to, I don't know. It's just weird. Anyway, same thing with the amino acids. I mean, I understand they look at that and say, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. There's an H, there's H2N, OH, and oh, it's like, okay, but if you put that on if you took the 20 amino acids, and these are your glyphs, right? These are the glyphs for the amino acids. You lay those out, and you bring somebody from a different part of the world. They don't speak that language. They've never been to that. They're not going to know what the hell that is. They're not going to know. So there's work to be done there too. Now, the Aztec Sunstone, I would argue that is in fact recognizable by other cultures. For the people that study this, not everybody studies it, but other cultures, people that study calendars, they look at that and they go, oh, how many is it? 20? Okay, yep, that's the 20 days. That's it. And they can look right at it and see. It's pretty simple. There's consistent shapes from culture to culture, and then the anytime you use animal symbolism, those are going to be pretty recognizable too, because they look at the animals in a different way. They look at the animals and they say, okay, what are its attributes? What does it do? What's its function? How does it behave? What's unique about it? Like take an anteater. How would you describe an anteater? A giant anteater, right? And I find the description in the Hindu, of all places, which does not have giant anteaters that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe they, but it's the body of a monkey with the head of a horse. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, the monkey is the only animal aside from the anteater that walks on their front knuckles. Okay, so that's the body of a monkey. They can also stand on their hind legs. And it's got the head of a horse. So that's the way it's depicted. And then when you take that correlation, you look at the Egyptian, it's like, well, they've got Thoth. It's the ibis, right? And that's that area of the calendars that is the monkey. And it's Thoth. The third decan of Libra is the one who writes down all the information, keeps the list, checking it twice. Santa Claus is down in December 21st. So he gets the ball on his head, matches the ball on the head of the monkey who's keeping the list up there in Libra. Okay? It's a weird story, but that's the truth. Santa Claus doesn't keep the list. Monkey does. Okay, he's got elves that help him, right? So why do we need this information? Well, what happened? Is there anybody else using it? Are they using it? Are they using it without you knowing? I can't prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, but I think I could definitely prove it to a point where you have very few doubts, okay? And I've been building a list of examples. This is something that's very difficult to do because you have to, the point that we don't have is you would actually need audio of somebody using this type of language and having these types of conversations. The only other way we can do it is by watching people that we suspect have it. We know the Pope has it, so I know the Vatican has it. I don't think the priests have it. I don't think the bishops have it. There might be a bishop or two somewhere that, has heard the rumors. The church is it's very, the church, when you talk about, all these men in the church, it's pretty, and I've had these reports from priests, by the way, so, and to them, it's like a dysfunctional gang of greedy, drooling worshipers trying to get close to God. And so they'll beat each other on the head to get one step in line closer. And that's the way it's been described to me by priests and people who went through the seminary. But so there was this strange thing that happened. We keep an eye on world events, and here's these two guys that come in that have a very precise profile. They kind of show up around the same exact time. They kind of commit to a series of actions that are detrimental to some and very favorable to others. So who was it favorable to and who was it detrimental to, and what is the extent of the profile and how was it used, how was it implemented? Were these two guys profiled by somebody with power and money, and they said, hey, if we can get these two guys in at the same time, this can be one of these old tricks of monarchy is to send in the clowns. You send in the clowns to distract the people, right? But I can't help but look at what happened. So Trump and Johnson both born on the same day in the 20 days, and they're both born in the same decan of the out of the 36 decans. And this decan is not known for being a leadership suitable decan. It is in the twins. It's the third decan. It's the unification or the splitting apart of the twins. The correlate in the periodic table is fluorine. And they actually use fluorine, right, to split hafnium, or they split, zirconium. They use fluorine to split zirconium. So the product of fluorine is one of them. One of the purposes and one of the functions of it is to use it to split other things, right? Well, isn't that what happened? So we're splitting away from the EU with Brexit, and then we're coming to America and we're dividing this entire country. Wow, that's pretty interesting. What a brilliant use of the twins. You send in the clowns, and they just keep saying stuff, and everybody looks at them and says, are these guys actually leadership material? Gee, I don't know. 90% of people are just looking at it like, well, I don't know. The people that knew these guys are like, no, stay away from those guys. But for the most part, people just didn't, because they don't know time. Now, if people knew the proper calendars, they knew the proper time, everybody would have been like, I don't know. this isn't, this is looking, no, we're not doing that. I mean, look how it worked out. So I also want to show the precision with the Hindu image on the left-hand side. Now, those are pretty rare. You can get them, but they're rare. The I Ching is published, and there it is. There's the line in the I Ching that absolutely sews it together. This is the line. I think it's the 5th line in the hexagram. The descriptor for this particular decan is it shows its subject bound with cords of 3 strands or 2 strands. Now, this is very common. You could go to it'd be the number 9 view in the Mount Fuji, and you will see a man wrapping cords and making a giant circle. Because this is also the, I don't want to get too detailed into going into this, but because I could do an hour and a half on each decan just doing that, showing all the different art examples and all this stuff, and I will be doing that. I've got it going on. So, but there it is, and placed in a thicket of thorns. Okay, so right behind this figure in this thing are the flowers with the thorns, and because it's in a garden, but it's a thicket, and he has 2 cords on the left arm, 3 cords under the left breastplate, 2 cords, 2 cords, 2 cords. So 2 or 3 cords each time putting this outfit together. And there's a ton of other symbolism in this as well. The hat and the little white, tail pieces coming off, the headband, the face. It's all just over the top, but I'm just showing that these images match descriptors from a completely different culture, from a completely different time. And the I Ching is 7,000 years old, minimum. I would have a tendency. It's older than that. I don't know how they got that put together, but that to do it without the computer, I think, is probably the greatest human achievement of all time. That's where I would put the I Ching. Just in the descriptors, not in the mathematical stuff. Forget that. There's nothing, again, the 8 masters, so people don't know that. It's the 20 days, 36 decans, and the 8 masters. This is a very simple time-keeping format. People don't know it. They regard it as a divinatory thing. They think that's great because everybody wants to do that, and that's great. You can divinate all you want. I don't, but I'm just telling you, people don't know the tarot. They don't know the Dendera. They don't know the I Ching. This is all kept a mystery to them, isn't it? That, to me, is very suspicious. Very suspicious. I don't, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Here you have this amazing human accomplishment. And everybody has theirs. Wouldn't you want to show yours too? That's the way everybody else is. I mean, it's definitely a thing. So what happened to the calendars? What was the process, or what was the result of the use of the twins this way? Why do we need this information? Well, so first you had Cambridge Analytica, and I don't think people are done looking at that. I wouldn't stop looking at that. I don't think that investigation got swept under a rug and disappeared in the blink of an eye, didn't it? And what else has happened since then? What else has happened since Cambridge Analytica? Has anybody noticed that the U.S. Sun launched right at the same time Harry and Meghan moved to Hollywood? What an interesting thing. Cambridge Analytica happened at the same time. Brexit happened at the same time. And the Confederate flag, which represents the loyalists, okay? The South, these were the loyalists in the Revolution The loyalists were kicked out and sent either south or into Canada, right? But these are loyalists. They want a king, okay? These are people that want an authority figure. They don't want a democracy. So that's what's going on. Who put those ideas in their head? Who exacerbated this? Okay? When was the last time that concept was barging into our capital? Well, it was 1814. Okay? So first there was the Revolution, then there was the War of 1812, and now we've got this. And it's got British fingerprints all over it. And I'm going to tell you another thing I've noticed. There is, and I'm not saying, listen, if you're a British person, I'm not speaking badly of British people. I don't think the British people, as a matter of fact, I know they don't, because I try to speak to as many British people as possible. They don't think the king has any power at all, and none of it matters, and they're just a figurehead, and we don't care. That's just our tradition, and blah, 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 blah. I disagree wholeheartedly. I think the House of Lords and the king have a lot to say about things, and I think the royals are never going to just walk over there and keep their mouth shut. That's not how they do it. That is not how. No. Good try, but no thanks. I'm not buying that one. None of the royals around the world are idle. They're not just idle figureheads. No. They can make it look like that. Sir Walter Bagot, who wrote the modern system for this, basically said as much. Said, well, we have to keep all the magic in the darkness so people don't really know. So this is how we did it. And it's not a thing. And they're always trying to get us back. What was the first thing Donald Trump did when he got in office? He approved 2 British-owned pipelines coming across our borders, going right through the biggest environmental racism in the history of the country, running that pipeline through the reservation up there, and as a result, Standing Rock came. And so the first thing Trump did was he expedited those pipelines, and he sent the troops in there and kicked those people out of there. And I watched that and I said, oh boy, who's the savages now? Right? Because they used to refer to the indigenous people here as savages. I think that's not who the savages are. That's not who the savages are. So, just to wrap it up here, what's happening? So, zombies. We have to listen to society when artists speak. Right? When the artists come up with a trend or a new genre or a new trend, you have to pay attention to that. And it's going to have some kind of symbolic relevance to what's actually happening, right? So in the 90s, here comes the internet. And all of a sudden, zombies everywhere. Kids started drawing these. Zombies became a thing. And this kept going and going and going and going until it, I would say the penultimate end of it, the trend is the I think it was 9 or 10 years of The Walking Dead, right? And there's just all these dead people walking around trying to chew your face off. And that was the youth, the youth of the 90s are the ones who brought that up and took it with them as they grew, right? So this is theirs, the youth of the 90s. And now the youth of the 2020s, we're looking at anthropomorphism. This is a much, much healthier, and I know it's kind of bizarre, but when you look at the history of humanity and the humanization of the things that we do, people can tell there's something wrong, there's something missing, and they're reaching for it. So that this is a very interesting progression, and I see it. I don't find it to be surprising at all. In fact, it's very timely. It's great. If people want to get in touch, What's the number one question that white guys go to the Indian reservations here in the United States? What do they want to do? There's a joke about it. Every reservation knows the jokes about this. There's jokes about it everywhere. Because the people would always say the same thing. Hey, can you tell me what my spirit animal is? And the Indian would just look at him and say, yeah, your spirit animal is a jackass. So, but this is... Oh, no, we got to have a nicer one. Can I have a nice one? It's like, no, it really is. Some people are stubborn mules. And there's a reason why there's this perception of animal spirits, because all the times humans are constant breeders. We don't have our own little time that's like, oh, this is the time of the human. We breed all year round. So other animals, they have pretty specific personalities they develop because they birth at the same times, but not humans. So we're really in the pool of all these personalities. And this, I think, is yeah, it might be a little immature and it seems, bizarre to a lot of people, but not to me. I think these guys are showing what happens if you have abundance. If you have abundance of everything else, now all your needs are taken care of, you're not being bombed, you're not being attacked too much. There's definitely danger on the streets of America, but you've got money, you've got abundance, you've got the ability to move around and do whatever you want. What do you want to do? Well, let's all we're going to make every day Halloween, but it's not Halloween, is it? This is anthropomorphism. This is the melding of the unity consciousness of the animal kingdom. And the humans embrace this, and they recognize specific kindred. Look how they choose different ones. Isn't it great? Like, everybody wants to be unique, but not necessarily. Say, hey, you're a wolf too. I want to be a wolf. I'm a wolf too, Or I'm a bear. Yeah, I'm a bear. So this is what's going on. So to me, I see hope in the youth. They're going to break through. And I think getting these calendars, yeah, it's a tough ask to get rid of the Gregorian calendar, but let's keep in mind, I heard one of the world's top scientists, or at least, people that think he's one of the world's top scientists, Neil deGrasse Tyson, lauding the beauty and precision of the Gregorian calendar just so profusely. And I'm going, are you kidding me? You call yourself a scientist and you're telling me that a calendar that starts the year in the middle of winter is the world's most accurate calendar. That is ridiculous. I don't know what he's looking at. None of the months are, come on. That's no. That calendar is only for one purpose. That's finance. That's it. And it's not for us. It's not like in our financial interest. It's finance. You can do that. We'll walk through the Gregorian calendar sometime. We'll do that. But I'm just telling you, the Gregorian calendar is not even close. In fact, it is what I consider to be an obfuscation operation. Like, that was a particular thing that was done to eradicate all the sentient calendars that we had everywhere. And they ruined it all through Europe, right? And then when they got to Guatemala, they're like, okay, what are these people about? And when they found out that the Maya had the 20 days, and they were actually way more knowledgeable about those 20 days than they were. Okay? They were way more knowledgeable about it. It's like, hey, wait a minute. These guys have all our stuff. They got this stuff too. How is this even possible? What do we do? You better go back over and ask the Pope what to do. So he goes back over, he asks the Pope, and next thing you know, they're burning everything. They brag about how much they burned. I think just recently there was a library, the largest indigenous library in the Western Hemisphere for indigenous literature, was just burned not too long ago. Isn't that interesting? So again, I'm not, even if I'm wrong, I'm just saying these things should tell you something. People need to pay attention, know what day it is, learn the 20 days, Don't, if anybody tells you that that calendar that we have is the best calendar we got, it's the best one we can use, bullshit. That's bullshit. Not even close. Not even close. That's like saying, hey, I don't want you to use the periodic table. I want you to, well, what you get here is you get a lump of coal, and you get you can have a little bit of nickel, and you can have some fluoride. Yeah, we'll put start drinking fluoride, but you can't have the periodic table. People would go nuts, like, no, bullshit. That's our knowledge. We have that. That's knowledge. You can't just take knowledge. Well, they did. What do you think happened to the calendars? That's like taking away the periodic table, isn't it? It's actually worse. It's actually worse. Periodic table is only one aspect of the calendars. Periodicity is the supreme knowledge of human beings on this planet, and we're going to need it everywhere we go. And if you have it, when you look at these people marching down the road like this, it's not surprising, it's not insulting, it's not frightening, it's not embarrassing, it's none of those things. You say, wow, okay, now we know what time it is. How interesting is that? Okay, have a good day. That's all I got.